Hi everyone, I'm here with Nilofer, a PM in Deep. I'm going to be talking about agents some more. We've got some really interesting questions here and lots of solutions that I know you've been thinking about. So if a developer hands off an integration task to an AI agent in a shared test environment, what are the sorts of things that you see going wrong with that?
Yeah, an agent has a ton of information at its disposal, and we offer a lot of different capabilities at Stripe. And so sometimes an agent can reach for things that might not be the optimal solution anymore. Stripe's been around for many years, and we've iterated on our product offering and come up with better solutions and better integration shapes that our users should be building into their integrations. So sometimes we see an agent reach for something that might be an older API version or something that we don't really recommend as a way to build the integration anymore. And we are doing as much as we can to help an agent get to the right shape integration that it should. We're doing this through things like skills and other agent steering mechanisms, like providing warnings in our APIs and helping an agent build the right thing. Now, just getting started with Stripe through an agent, though, can sometimes be a daunting task, or just things that take people out of the flow that they're in. And so getting an agent a test environment that they can get started with Stripe right away is something that we found to be really helpful for a builder to get to that aha moment and see their product working before they actually need to come and sign up for Stripe.
So if you compare like traditional coding where you're doing it by yourself versus someone using an agent, where do you see the agent side saving time versus where you might want to keep a human in the loop?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of decision making that can happen and a lot of discovery that can happen when a human is going and trying to understand a new product surface on their own. Like I mentioned, Stripe offers a lot of capabilities to our users, but for someone who is trying to get through and just accept that first payment because they want to see their business idea be real and succeed, we can minimize the amount of time and compress that build cycle for them. And the agent can do that by knowing exactly the right shape that it should build and scaffold out the Stripe integration and get that to the human on the other side that just wants to sell whatever they're selling, right? And so there's definitely speed in an agent being able to gather the right context based off of exactly what you said you needed. So if you're selling something via subscriptions versus one-time payments, an agent can help you know exactly what the integration should be much faster than you might be able to by going and searching through our documentation or exploring the product yourself.
Yeah. So first of all, what is the claimable sandbox API? But also, from an agent point of view, why is it important when the agent is making API calls on your behalf?
Yeah. So last year, I got to come and hang out with you, and we talked about the Claimable Sandboxes API. And it was a new API that we made that different AI platforms like V0 or Replit integrated with, where in their experience, in the building experience that they're controlling, they are able to provision a sandbox for you, a Stripe sandbox for you, in context of your experience. So you could have come up to one of those products and said, I'm building a storefront, I'm selling something, and I need to accept payments. And they would recommend Stripe to you and then actually get you a sandbox so that you could start testing against that right away without having to leave, go sign up for Stripe, get the API keys, bring that back, and do all those manual steps yourself. So via that API, they can provision that test environment for you, get the right keys available to you, and you're off to the races, building a real working Stripe integration. And then once you feel really confident in what you've built, you can say, okay, now I'm ready to claim, and now I will give Stripe that information that is needed so that I can accept real money and go sell to real people. That's really useful for, that API is really useful for our platforms like those that I mentioned who want to create a really crafted experience to guide you through. We've got a lot of people who are building outside of those tools as well, using things like Cursor or Claude or any other agent. And we want to make sure that that goodness is available to them as well. So what we actually did is take many of the same building blocks that back that API and build new commands in our CLI to make it available to any agent. So any agent can now come and say, oh, you said you wanted to build a Stripe integration? Let me grab a sandbox for you, get those keys for you, so you can start building right away.
Yeah. So walk me through the CLI command. What do you type? How do you get it set up? What does it deliver? How does it break down into something practical?
Yeah. So the agent will go ahead and, if it discovers or you say, I need to accept payments, it might, without any sort of additional information, go search our Stripe documentation and find that there is this new CLI command available for it, where it can say, Stripe sandbox create, and get that sandbox provisioned without you having to have signed into the CLI at all. And so it can get that sandbox back for you, and you'll get back an ID of that sandbox, as well as the API keys, so that you can actually start making real API calls against it, as well as a claim link, because at some point, hopefully, everything has worked out and you want to launch your business. And so then you can go ahead and claim that as well. An agent can kind of hide a lot of that for you, though. It's finding those commands, running them, and just confirming that that is actually what you want to do, and helping you build the integration along the way, and then help you claim that sandbox at the time that you're ready to go.
So if an agent makes a mistake, though, what happens in this process?
It might make a mistake in building the integration in the right way for you. You might have, it might come back and the integration shape might not be exactly what you wanted, or perhaps the branding and layout of the page is not exactly what you wanted. And so you can go back and forth with the agent. The sandbox is a environment that is living on. You have those API keys, and so it's there for you to go back and forth and iterate on, this is exactly what I want my storefront to look like, and it can get you you can iterate with it to get to what exactly you want it to have looked like.
Now, if you want to make sure that your agent's not touching anything real in your Stripe environment, what do you have to do to install and configure anything to give you that sort of safety?
Yeah. So the sandbox by itself, that foundational primitive that we have at Stripe, gives you those safeguards automatically. Anything you do in a sandbox cannot touch real money. It doesn't touch, once you have a sandbox associated with a live account, you can't touch your live account. These are completely separated environments. And we do that intentionally so that you can feel really safe inside of those, whether it's you as a human, your coworkers doing something inside of these environments, or letting an agent loose there as well. There are other ways that we are making sure that, if you are using an agent to interact with your Stripe account, that we're giving you the utmost safety and trust in being able to do that. We do that in a few different ways. First is our flexible permissions model. And so when you actually give a agent access to your Stripe account, you are doing so in a way where you're configuring exactly what the permissions that it has access to are. So you would say, I want it to be able to read these things, or I want it to be able to write these things, and make sure that you feel really comfortable with the types of objects that it has access to and actions that it has access to. So that's one way that we're keeping you safe when you're using an agent with your Stripe integration. Another way is through our approvals platform. So we've shipped new functionality where you can actually go in and define approval rules and put even more guardrails around what your agent can do. So maybe you do want an agent to send out a refund, but you only want it to send out a refund up to a certain threshold. Maybe over $100, that agent should reach out to a human and say, hey, should we actually process this? And so our approvals platform provides the flexibility for you to be able to say that, and on specific actions say, these are the thresholds that I'd like to set, so that you can make sure that your agent doesn't do more than you want it to do.
What sort of tasks are you seeing that agents are surprisingly good at? And where are the ones that you think, well, you probably still need a human in the loop?
Yeah. So agents are, surprisingly good once we, can give them a recommendation of how to build the Stripe integration, actually building that integration out. So we're working on ways that we can take some information from you and very clearly say, yes, this is the kind of integration you should build. If you're saying, I want to build a subscriptions business or one-time payments, we can help you and give your agent back instructions on this is exactly how you should build those things. So once an agent has things like our plugins or our skills, that comes chock full of information on our best practices and how an agent should build. So we see an agent reach for those things and be able to build the right integrations and continue to steer them on our best practices and our latest and greatest tools that are available to them. Moving money is still just kind of a scary topic to let an agent do. And so we're adding more functionality there, and they are able to do it. But again, I think you want to be really careful. You want to make sure that you have the right guardrails set up and the right permission set up, so that an agent isn't sending more or doing more than you want it to do. So it's possible, but it can be a little nerve-wracking sometimes.
Yeah, and actually it leads to a good question about testing, because once you see agents writing and building code, does this change how you think about the testing model?
Absolutely. If an agent can now understand what the best way to build your integration is, an agent should also be able to understand the best way to test your integration, right? And so we're doing a lot of thinking, in this whole developer experience, agent experience life cycle of how do we make that whole loop really much better experience for anyone who's building with Stripe. We should make it really easy for you to be able to build something, know exactly how to test it, have your agent test it. Agent understands what went wrong and should fix it itself. That's the dream, right? A loop that works like that. We're still a far ways away from that, but that's where a ideal vision of how a human and an agent working together to build a Stripe integration should look.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a fascinating topic, and I'm sure we'll be talking about it many months to come and having you back here to update us on all the latest and greatest. But thanks very much, Nilofer, for sharing this.